This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Andy Clarke here in Cardiff. A slightly blinded Andy Clarke. Andy, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. There's a light behind you, which people can't see, which is incredibly bright. So it's probably exposing every single flaw on my weathered face, but that's all right.
Andy, here we are. Lauren Price and Jessica McCaskill. Lauren's first crack at World Honours. Just want to get your thoughts on this fight. Do you feel like it's the right move for Lauren? Do you feel like she's ready now to step up and challenge for World Honours?
Yeah, I do. I think she was always going to need to make this step pretty quickly. Seventh fight, it might seem a bit quick, but the apprenticeship you serve in female pro boxing isn't as long as it is in the men's. It doesn't need to be because currently the depth isn't the same. That'll change over time. So there's no point in just getting people rounds and more fights if they're not really going to do much for you. And I don't think there's anything else out there in terms of an interim step that would really be worthwhile. So you have to take that plunge. It's just inevitable, really. And she is going in deep, though, because McCaskill she's the former undisputed champion. So you have to make her number one in the welterweight division. And she's never lost any of those titles in the ring. She's never lost at this weight. She beat Cecilia Brækhus, who was long-reigning, undefeated fighter. And she's a fighter I've got a lot of time for because it was hard for her to make any kind of impression when she turned pro, to build her profile, all those kinds of things that you need to do. It was tough. I remember talking to her about it before she came over to box Katie Taylor back in 2017, I think that would have been. So she's had to work really, really hard to get to where she's got to, and she wants to stay there for as long as she can. And she's hard work. She'll be hard work on the night, absolutely.
Mentioning her being hard work, obviously we've seen UK and Irish fighters over recent years have success, i.e. Katie, Chantel Cameron, as well as Sandy Ryan, who many people felt had done enough to have a hand raised when they fought last year. When you look at Lauren Price and the skill set that she will bring into the fight, what do you think she might be able to expose of Jessica's?
She's technically the better boxer of the two, and that's something that she needs to try and make count. You look at those defeats, and obviously Taylor's Taylor, and she gave her a good fight. Took her the distance, gave her a good fight. Chantel Cameron, again, you're talking about another real top name there. Against Sandy Ryan, she deviated a bit away from what she normally does, McCaskill, I felt, and tried to box her a bit more. And I don't think it was a good idea because what she's really good at is the fact that she's sound enough, but she's very aggressive, she's very fit, and she's now very experienced, and very experienced deep in fights. She's had more world title fights than Lauren's had fights. So I think she needs to go back and just do what she's always been really, really good at, which is that high intensity, high tempo, look to really get on top of you and beat you up, basically. And in 2-minute rounds, that can be a really, really difficult thing to counteract. You look at the kind of problems that Katie Taylor had with Delphine Pursuit, for example. It's not like for like, but technically it was night and day, Katie Taylor and Delphine Pursuit. Delphine Pursuit, from a technical standpoint, you look at her and you just think she's like one of the worst fighters you've ever seen, but she's incredibly effective at what she does. And McCaskill, that isn't the same as Pursuit, but to an extent, that's what makes her really tricky to deal with, is that she's got her method, she trusts it, and she knows how to implement it. And if you're Price, you've got to make sure that you match all of that energy, and at that point, then you can try and make your superior skills count. But over the course of 20 minutes, that's actually quite hard.
Andy, away from all things McCaskill versus Price, going back to Saudi, obviously I know you've just done the review pod with Barry and Rob, but one thing that's been a big talking point is the Fury-Joshua fight now and how different of an outcome it might be prior to, say, 12 months ago. Has your opinion fluctuated, changed at all on the back of AJ's most recent performances as to how you think a Fury-Joshua fight may play out now?
Yeah, it has, because he's got his mojo back, hasn't he? And that was... He had to get it back, or he really didn't have much future in the division, because what we were worried about with him was that he'd lost that instinct to gamble. And heavyweight boxing, all boxing's a gamble, but heavyweight boxing in particular is a gamble. You put yourself out there, and if you want to knock somebody out, you have to roll that dice, hold your feet for a split second longer, which gives them a chance of knocking you out. There is no playing it safe if you wanted to succeed at the top end. And it just looked like he might have lost that ability to roll the dice. But it looks like he hasn't, actually, which is great. With Fury, I mean, he was really poor against Ngannou. There's no question about that. So but I don't really know what to make of that, because I do feel like he's a big game player, and when he's really on it and he feels threatened and he feels like the other person could beat him, and although he'll claim that he never thinks that, he does think that, he knows that, he's a realist, they all are at the top of the sport. When he's got that kind of challenge in front of him where he knows he's got to be completely focused, that's when you get the best out of him. And it's not like he's got loads of miles on the clock, Tyson. Those fights against Wilder were, the first one and the third one were hellacious. And maybe that third one's taken more out of him than we know. But maybe it hasn't. Maybe he just hasn't really had anything since then that he's really had to get himself maxed out for. But he does against Usyk, we know that. And he would have to against Joshua. So the gap's narrowed, but if it happens, it'll be because Fury's beaten Usyk, and therefore you would have to make Fury a favourite because he'll have beaten Usyk.
Just a couple of fights I want to quickly get your thoughts on before we wrap this up, because I know you got to go live with Sky. Canelo Munguia, what are your thoughts on that fight, Andy?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I think it's a good fight for him. It's Munguia or Benavidez are the guys, aren't they? Hopefully he does Munguia, and if he beats Munguia, then Benavidez. I think those are the only two fights the fans would really have kind of tolerated from him this year. And Munguia, it'll be good to watch, won't it?
Sorry,
it'll be good to watch.
So how do you actually expect to see it play out?
I think Canelo will win, but I think it'll be good to watch.
And then just final one, Taylor-Catterall too, just because I haven't asked you about it yet. Andy, what's your take on the rematch?
I'm all over it. I know it's probably later than it should have been, but I still think the interest in it is big. I think the press conferences were great. I think the mutual loathing between the two is genuine, and that's always a good thing, because there's nothing synthetic about this. It's completely authentic. I do feel like Taylor is going to perform a lot better in the second fight than he did in the first fight, but Catterall's a really good fighter, and I find that a difficult one to pick. I would probably side with Taylor, but I find it a hard one to pick.
Andy, I know you're a busy man. Sky have called you over, so thanks for speaking to me. I'll see you soon.
Cheers, mate.